Hey everybody, nice of you to join in tonight. It's just about 10:30, we're 10:29. We'll get started here in just a moment. So you might want to let everybody know and, give them a text or a call and say, tune in to Nightcap. Let's see what John's got going. I said earlier today on Facebook, I said, it's going to be a barn burner. Had a lot of stuff to talk about today, and I hope that you're ready for it. And we'll see how it goes. It's 78 degrees. Some say 80, some say 78. But all in all, it's a heck of a lot better than 96. And that's what it was today. In the studio today, not under the gazebo, because, I'm not stupid. So, anyway. Hey, Randy, how you doing? Nice of you to join in. You're first one on tonight, so it's good to see you. I know we'll have a bunch more, and we have got a lot of stuff to talk about. You know, I always start out, about Wednesday thinking, what are we going to have to talk about on Nightcap? It's not me deciding, it's what happens on the news. It's what crosses my desk is interesting stuff to talk about. And that's kind of how we do it. Now, tonight, there is probably a good 35 or 40 minutes. We'll try and get it done in 30. That's what I'd like to do. And I'll do as much of it as I can without up and down and putting my glasses on and taking them off and try and get it all done. Hey, Butch, how are you? Nice to see you. And Don, you're in there too. Nice to see you, Don. Don and Ruthie here. Two of my favorite Navy people. My Navy corpsman, my Navy guy out there, Don Lang. And thank you all for joining in. So, what's happening on the news? If you've been watching it, there's been a lot of it. I mean, crazy stuff. Let's see. Benjamin Netanyahu has not been arrested yet, even though Zohan Mandami, the mayor of New York, says that Netanyahu is fomenting hate, and he thinks that he should be arrested. He can't do it. He asks for the International Tribunal to arrest him as a war criminal, and actually, he's just doing what every other leader of a country who's involved in a conflict is doing. So, Zohan, you're wrong. Just stay out of it. Ukraine keeps attacking. They just will not quit, even though, of course, they're not as big as Russia, although they were part of it, right? Crimea, another part of Russia, gets attacked by the Ukraine folks, and their power grid has left hundreds of thousands of people there without electricity or water for days at a time. That's going on. Let's see, what else? Oh, this I thought was absolutely fascinating today. A bill in Louisiana, this is a state legislature, but a bill in Louisiana started out as a tax rebate for fiber optic equipment. Sounds like a good plan, right? You want better internet, you want that pipeline that'll send you a gig up and a gig down or whatever. But by the time it became law, they had added so much to it that it had become applicable to data centers and enabled Meta, that's the parent company of Facebook, who lets me come on here and talk to you, bless their hearts. It's allowing Meta to start a project big enough to cover nearly 6 square miles. What takes 6 square miles? A new data center for Meta, for Facebook. Isn't that great? That's the people that those people in Louisiana voted in. Now, earlier this week, Donald Trump and the leader of Saudi Arabia, I'm not sure what they call him, I forgot, Crown Prince, King, President, whatever. Saudi Arabia and the U.S. entered into an agreement that they would be allowed to handle enriched uranium. Hi, Herb. Nice to see you. Good night. Thanks. Or not good night, but good evening to you. And Larry. Thanks for you for joining in. Larry Butts is watching. Okay. And nice to see you. And hi, Barb. Glad you're here, too. Barb Valentine is watching. All right. So Saudi Arabia, now Congress has to approve this. This is going to be 6 months down the road. But what gets me is Saudi Arabia and the Houthis. They have been fighting. You know, the Houthis are Iranian-backed. They've rapidly spiraled into a conflict that could expand into a full-blown war. Stay tuned. And oil prices fell as the fighting in the Middle East has kind of paused. So that's that. And other news locally, the Democratic Party, the Democratic National Committee, is so short on cash that it's asking vendors not to send bills until after the elections. I guess they're planning on some big wins. And we'll see what happens. All right, that's the news up to the minute, or at least as of about 5 o'clock this afternoon. Okay? All right. Interesting stories in the news over the past week. You may have missed these, so we'll tell you about this. Manual transmissions. When's the last time you saw a car, sat in a car, rode a car, or drove a car that had a manual transmission? Either three, well, they're never three on a tree anymore because nobody has a car with a bench seat in the last 25 or 30 years. You know, they've all got the console and they put that automatic transmission or the manual transmission down on the floor. Well, there are only 0.6% of U.S. manufactured cars and trucks that have a manual transmission available. Just doesn't happen. There's not hardly any more left. And quite frankly, it's not going to change. But God bless him, the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, said, "Out of our cold, dead hands will we not have a manual transmission Mustang." So there you have it. 5-speed Mustang still out there. But that's just about it. There's that one. What's your favorite summertime treat? Would you probably say ice cream? I would, except I haven't been eating any for about, what's it been? Close to 6 months now. But anyway, ice cream. We eat a lot. In fact, Americans eat enough ice cream every summer, just in the summer, to fill 113 football stadiums. Now, that means start dumping ice cream down on the field and filling it up all the way to the top tier and the overhang of the roof, 113 of them. That's how much ice cream we eat. That's a lot of ice cream. Butch says watermelon is his favorite. Well, watermelon is good, especially watermelon ice cream. What have you been watching on TV lately? I've been binge watching Lost because when it was on from, 2004 to 2009, I was out working every night doing karaoke somewhere, so I never got to watch a lot of nighttime TV in those few years. And everybody had always told me, "Oh, Lost is so great. You should really watch Lost. It is really great." Then I'd hear Lost, it's really weird. And it is weird, and it is great. And so I finally started watching it, and I'm up into season 4 now. And it's not really jumped the shark yet, but boy, does it go off in weird tangents. But I'm enjoying it, so if you've not ever watched it, there's my recommendation. We're going to talk about some other recommendations before we're done. Back a few years ago, Stephen King, who of course was allowing so many of his books to be made into movies, most of them not very good because he had nothing to do with them and they'd make changes. Then, of course, they made quite a few miniseries as well, like It and The Stand and Salem's Lot and a bunch of others. I didn't think Dr. Sleep was all that good, but recently over the last few years. A guy named Mike Flanagan has done quite a few of Stephen King's, plus some other pretty good ones. Hi, John. Oh, I'll tell you what. This would be a good night, except it's not Friday, Saturday, or Sunday yet. But right now would be a good time. I hope the temperature this weekend, John, is more like this than like what it was in the daytime. We're talking about Twisted Trail Winery there, of course. One of the sponsors of Sean and I, and good friend to the old radio station, and to me, and to this program, Nightcap. So, John, thanks for watching. And we'll be talking about you and this weekend and those lovely sunsets when you sponsor Sean and I on Wednesday. So anyway, Mike Flanagan, who has done things like Dr. Sleep and Absentia, and also he did a non-Stephen King thing called The Haunting of Hill House, and also a really terrific miniseries that showed up on Netflix called Midnight Mass. And if nothing else, it'll make you appreciate vampires, because that was what it was pretty much about. And in Maine, of course, where almost all of Stephen King's stuff goes on. It's also National Scotch Day today. If you're a Scotch drinker, good for you. And if you're not, you might want to try it sometime. There are about, 150 to 200 Scotch distilleries in Scotland. Yes, that's where they all are, in Scotland. If you want to make Scotch in America, you call it American single malt. You don't call it Scotch. Scotch is only made in Scotland. But it's very interesting. I saw some numbers and some interesting things about Scotch. And one of the most interesting things about it is they use, of course, charred oak barrels after bourbon has been aged in them. They can only use them one time to make bourbon. So there is this whole tremendous secondary, tertiary, and more market for used barrels, charred oak. Scotch uses charred oak first out of the whiskey, but then it goes to rum, tequila, the Añejo, the amber-colored tequila, uses charred oak barrels. And then when they've got all the goodness out of them, all the vanilla, all the chocolate, all the char for flavoring into these other types of alcohol, then they get cut in half and become garden planters and landscape things, okay? That's what happens to charred oak barrels. And then when they fall apart and they can't use them for that, well, they just break them up and use them for, charred oak for smokers, things like that. All right. Next thing. Did you see The Odyssey yet? Have you gone to a movie theater to see The Odyssey? If you want to see it in 70mm IMAX, there's only 25 theaters in the United States that do it. The closest one to us, I guess, is in maybe Chicago, probably. I think that's it. Haven't heard any different. Turns out the best way to experience an epic poem, like The Odyssey, they say, is to do it on a 70mm IMAX screen in 18K. Remember, your TV used to operate on 320 or 360 horizontal lines. Then they came up with HD. Then they came up with 4K. Now there's 8K out there. But the IMAX 18K, that's quite a resolution. You can count the pixels on Matt Damon's nose. That's how it is. My goodness. The great thing about this movie is it's directed by Christopher Nolan, and he is the guy that Hollywood puts their money in. Really, The Odyssey is a terrific movie. I've seen it twice. Yes, I've sat through the 3 hours twice, did not fall asleep. One guy, a guy from Florida named Zach Weebly, took a car, a bus, and a train over 300 miles to see it, so he could see it. See it as it was made on the IMAX 70mm screen. To do it, you have to pay a lot more money for your ticket. They say that IMAX 70mm tickets are 81% more expensive, but they're still hard to get, even with 3 a.m. showings. That's a tougher trip than Odysseus took. But you know, it was just a poem. It wasn't real. But it was a pretty good poem, and if you ever read it, you would know it. It is epic. You know, Homer wrote the Iliad, and Homer wrote the Odyssey. And I don't know if he's going to make the Iliad or not, maybe. He combined some of the things from the Iliad into the Odyssey because people expected it. They wanted to see a Trojan horse, which was in the Iliad, not the Odyssey. Charlize Theron looked good. So did, who was it? Anne Hathaway. She looked pretty good as the wife of Odysseus. $140 million of the Odyssey's global ticket sales have come from IMAX theaters. It's done about $284 million in this country and 636 million globally. A lot of folks are fired up about the Odyssey. Oh, and they also have sold 10,000 of the Odyssey-themed popcorn buckets. I think they're shaped like a helmet. I haven't seen it. We didn't do it here. But even at the West Side, it is majestic, and I do highly recommend it. Not too long ago, the Montgomery County Cancer Association held a charity auction. They sold some luxury purses. You know, they might have been Gucci, they might have been Chanel, they might have been Kate Spade. I don't know who all they were. I wasn't there because I'm not a purse carrier. However, found some interesting news about what's going on in the high-end luxury bag market. On Thursday of last week, Italian police raided the headquarters of 11 luxury brands in Milan. Of course, you know that's fashion center, including Chanel and Bulgari and more. The investigators suspect these brands of turning a blind eye to subcontractors who employ Chinese workers in conditions that violate labor laws, insufficient wages, excessive work hours, and cramming 10 people into a 30 square meter room without heat. That's where they live. And according to sources there, it doesn't stop with those names for the ones they raided last week. It also includes Prada, Givenchy, and Dolce & Gabbana. The mechanism is almost always the same. What happens is the major brand places an order with an audited supplier, somebody that they can count on, somebody they've done business with, somebody who promises to do it the right way, and then they in turn subcontract it out to a smaller workshop until all trace of who is actually doing the manufacturing is lost. 80% of, who is it? Loris Piana, owned by LVMH, one of the big luxury houses, was already placed under court administration last year for the same reasons. So in other words, if you spend a ton of money on a high fashion purse and it says made in Italy, that little extra touch of soul that you might have paid several hundred or even thousands of dollars for might have been deserving of quotation marks around it. Isn't that crazy? It's true. So how are you tonight? Here, we've run through quite a few things here in the first 10 minutes. And we're not done. We got more to go. But I do want to tell you that summer is hot. We're going to talk a little bit about the heat dome and how it's affecting things, including our food, including the situation farmers are facing, coming up in a few minutes. But right now, I want to mention something else. I want to tell you an obituary of a guy named Kim Peek. Now, he died a long time ago in 2009. I guess this story is just coming out. But if you remember one of Dustin Hoffman's most famous films, along with Tom Cruise, that, of course, is Rainman. The movie was inspired by this real-life person, Kim Peek. Now, you say he died in 2009. He was born with agenesis of the corpus callosum, meaning that he lacked the network of nerve fibers that connect the two hemispheres of the brain. And in the absence of the corpus callosum, his neurons had to create new secondary connections, and this is what attributed to his remarkable memory. If you remember in the movie, Dustin and Tom went to a casino, and Dustin, the Rain Man, was counting cards, and this guy could do all these things and much more, because Kim Peek could read a book in an hour, and he could repeat 98% of its contents, including the table of contents, by heart. He could read 2 pages simultaneously, using only one eye per page. It's believed that at the time of his death from a heart attack, he had memorized approximately 12,000 books. It was only later in his life, partly thanks to the success of the film, that he began to develop comedic skills. Later in life, he also learned to play the piano in a very short time, and he could reproduce melodies he had heard from a very young age and which were stored in his memory. But paradoxically, and this is what is really amazing, he obtained very low results on IQ tests. These tests were deemed unsuitable for evaluating a personality like Kim Peek's. But he was quite the fellow. Gone in 2009. So maybe you want to watch Rainman again and get an idea of what Kim Peek was like. And probably it still wouldn't do the whole thing. All right. Now, a public service announcement. This is from Kim Commando. I don't know if you read Kim Commando's newsletter or maybe perhaps watch her podcast or listen to it online. But she has a newsletter called The Current, an email she sends out. And she was talking this week, among a bunch of other things, about a guy who was hacked. Now, I don't know if you've ever dealt with that, if you've ever been hacked. But I have to tell you that, I think I mentioned this last week, I was recently hacked. And boy, was I hacked off. Because they didn't just hack a credit card, they hacked a bank account. And the difficult part in that happening is not stopping, it's getting a new bank account and what all is required. And when you think about maybe 15 or 20 auto pays for all your bills, whether it be your cable bill or your phone bill or your electric bill, or it could be a online subscription to a TV service you watch, whether it's Hulu or Prime Video, your Amazon account, all these things, they love for you to have an auto pay, of course. They don't want to send you a bill, and you don't want to get the bill, you just want them to take it out. Well, try closing and reopening 35 auto pays and try to get it all done in a short period of time. It's not easy. And then you think you got it done, and then, oh, I forgot that one. And oh, I forgot that one. And then you got all these people saying, oh, you know what? Your payment didn't go through. You're a deadbeat. No, I'm not. I was hacked. Oh, okay, well, let's straighten it out. And that's exactly what happened. But here's what Kim was talking about, and here's what happened to a guy. And when I thought I was really mistreated, what I went through was nothing compared to what Barry went through. And here's what Barry went through. Barry's credit score fell from 810 to 575 overnight. No warning. But not only did his credit score fall, and I'm going to put my glasses on to read this. Then came, with no warning, 3 maxed out credit cards, a $250,000 mortgage application, and a bill for a full set of dentures in Florida, ordered by a woman using his name. He never clicked a thing. So what happened? He had no idea why. And Kim Commando says, neither did I, and I do this for a living. A week later, the mail started. 3 new credit cards, all maxed out. A mortgage application for $250,000, and those dentures. Now, what's it take to unwind all of that? Now, here's the interesting thing about it. It takes forever. Months. Not an afternoon on the phone. Affidavits, police reports, disputes with 3 credit bureaus, letters to companies they never did business with, and the part nobody warns you about, and which I found out, the whole burden lands on you. The banks collected, the dentist collected, Barry got homework. He wasn't careless, he clicked no bad link, and he gave his social security number to nobody. His file walked out of a breach he'd never heard of, and that's how it happens. So, here's what he had to do. This is what he had to do to fix it. He froze all 4 credit files at Equifax and Experian and TransUnion and one I'd never heard of, but evidently it's out there, Innovus. Free by law, and it stops new accounts cold. And he stopped his spouse's credit too. He filed a report at identitytheft.gov, and it generates the FTC identity theft report and recovery plan that forces disputes through. He pulled every credit report and read each line. You can do that at freeannualcreditreport.com. He added identity theft monitoring. The freeze slams the door, but it never tells you when your name surfaces somewhere new. Somebody has to watch the windows. So what happened was, he kept on going. He finally got it done after months. He knew he'd been robbed. He got his score back. He never did get the dentures. Good thing he had a full set of teeth. So just be careful. All right. Oh. And here's a young lady, Peggy Sue, says she was, and they had already charged $2,000, but she said she thinks they got it from where? She thinks they got it from Amazon. She froze all of hers. Good for her. I hope yours went faster than mine did, because boy, it took forever for me. When I say forever, I mean really just a few days. But the hassle, you know, when you go to the bank to close a checking account and open a new one, I had no idea there was so much paperwork involved. There wasn't near that much paperwork to open it the first time. Closing and opening another one to replace that one, that's a little more work. Oh boy, it's something. All right, now I'm time for the last thing. It's already 10:59, but if I go 5 minutes over, you need to hear this. This is a story, a true story. Back when most of us were much younger, we knew families that got food stamps. Young mothers and expectant mothers got help through the WIC program. Years ago, the math happening at the kitchen table was simple. Those food stamps came in a fixed amount, and that amount didn't move when prices did. So when milk and rice and ground beef went up, nobody sent them more coupons. Or today, when people use that card, like a debit card, they don't raise that up with a higher limit. The stamps just bought less food than it bought the month before. And moms worked that out by themselves, and something came off the list. Nobody in that house stopped eating because food got expensive, right? We paid, and something else went. If you multiply that by a few billion people, and you understand why a small drop in supply produces a violent move in price. We've got things going on right now that are causing great issues. Obviously, we have a heat dome. We have drought somewhere. We have floods somewhere. We have war going on. Frustrations going on. A climate risk firm called Resilience ran the numbers on what this El Nino that we're experiencing could do. In their worst case, global farm production drops 14.3%. Now, this is a worst case scenario, but okay. $342 billion, in other words, with prices up 10 to 50% across major crops and 50 to 100% or more on the exposed ones, the ones that are really hit: rice, palm oil, sugarcane, coffee. Let's talk about coffee for a minute. For the last several years, I had a Keurig. I drink coffee out of K-cups for convenience. Also because the coffee I like is not the coffee Linda likes, so K-cups made it simple. But the last time I bought a bag of coffee to run through that Bun coffee maker before I got the Keurig, I think I paid about $4 a pound. I think that slightly less than 2-pound canister of Folgers or Maxwell House cost about $9. I thought over $4 a pound was expensive. Because I recently bought a Ninja that did the K-cups and could make it by the pot, and we decided we'd drink it by the pot to save a little money, because, you know, K-cups get more expensive, coffee does. I was shocked when I went to Walmart and I saw that both Folgers and Maxwell House in that less than 2-pound canister is about $21 now. I hadn't looked at it in years. So shame on me. But $21, I thought, my goodness, the K-cups seem cheaper. Whether they are or not, they seem that way. Well, those scenarios, back to Resilience, to their credit, they're clear those are scenarios and not predictions. But they got a live test 3 years ago. Weird rain and hard heat hit West Africa, where 4 countries grow more than 60% of the world's cocoa. Ivory Coast alone grows 38%. Cocoa went to a record nearly $11 a kilo. That's 2.2 pounds. Roughly triple where it started. And a researcher at Oxford tied that spike directly to El Nino. That El Nino ranked 5th in the modern record as worst. The one forming now is forecast to rank 1st. This is real. Parts of it are aimed straight at what I just told you. Cocoa's come back down some, and the Cocoa Organization even forecast a surplus for 24-25, the first in 4 years. Well, on coffee, one commodity analyst I read argues that El Nino can't really dent the supply. Yet, because Brazil's record crop's already coming out of the ground. Soybeans have historically done better in El Nino years, up 2 to 5%, on friendlier weather in the U.S., Argentina, and Brazil. And a food policy professor at Tufts University, William Masters, told Newsweek that while this event will be brutal for farmers and poor households in Africa and Asia, he said its effects in the United States should be limited because we buy our food from many different places. However, let's get off of El Nino and let's talk about the thing that will affect us. Anybody selling you an American grocery apocalypse, I think, is wrong. However, because of what's going on, fertilizer's up 31%. The Strait of Hormuz used to let about 88 ships a day go through. They're down to about 15 ships a day right now. Weather by itself would be a manageable problem. Weather showing up on top of 2 wars hitting the same system from the other end. You first have heat with no precedent. You have drought in some places, floods in others, because hot air carries more water and then dumps it on whatever made it through the dry stretch. And then you have the Strait of Hormuz. The strait's been effectively shut to commercial traffic since the Iran war. The farm consequence, plainly, the shutdown has choked off fertilizer and other critical inputs, while heat waves cook crops across Europe. Then there's the Black Sea. We don't talk about that much, but Russia and Ukraine have started aiming at each other's grain. Russia has better than 20% of the world's wheat exports. Ukraine has 7%. That's 27%. And as they move close to a third of close to a third of the wheat that moves across a border. Ukraine's own Agrarian Confederation says the country has lost about a third of its Black Sea export capacity, with 4 of 13 big grain terminals no longer buying. Wheat's at a 2-year high. Corn and rapeseed went with it. Bloomberg's caveat belongs here too. This isn't 2022 yet. The reason the 3 are worse together than apart is that they feed each other. Fuel costs drive fertilizer costs. Fertilizer costs drive yields down. And a weak crop walking into extreme weather comes out weaker. Then governments panic. And then you couple that with the fact that 6 companies out of 10,000 pretty much control the world's food, at least here in this country. A shortage in an industry where few companies handle most of the money turns into pricing power for those companies. The same concentration shows up in the dirt. 4 crops, wheat, rice, corn, and soybeans, feed more than 60% of the calories that human beings eat. 4 West African countries grow most of the cocoa. Normally, a bad harvest in one place gets covered by a good one somewhere else, and a global El Nino is the specific event that breaks weather in several places at once, which is what stops the covering from working. Food behaves like nothing else in a downturn. Companies can defer new software, but boys and girls, nobody defers breakfast. That's what we're going to be dealing with. So just be warned, be careful, and God bless us all, because we're going to need His help. And that's Nightcap for tonight. And I'll see you next Monday, hopefully with some better news, okay? Good night, everybody. And thank you for joining in. Tell your friends. This will be up. You can watch it tomorrow.